Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.
With me today is Phil Staehle, founder and winemaker of Enkidu Winery, located here in Sonoma County, actually in Sonoma, right?
In Sonoma, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Phil's going to tell us what wines of his pair best with some of your holiday meals. Over the past 6 years, Phil and I have become friends and baseball buddies. Phil is a UC Davis graduate, but not from the side of the campus you would think. I'm Alan Mayseal. Welcome, Phil.
Glad to be here, Alan.
All right, tell me about this undergrad at UC Davis.
Yeah. So I went to UC Davis as recruited to play ball. Found out within the first couple of quarters, it's a brutal school, as far as stated. It's academically, it's a great school. It operates at a very, very fast mode on a quarter system, which was pretty overwhelming at first. So I basically got into political science, public service, pre-law, foreign policy. It's something I really enjoyed quite a bit. And at the time, I was really a fan of wine, so I was able to take some classes there in an enology department and so forth. But I have to say that my wine interest goes back to the point when I was an adolescent. So I was 10, 12 years old. I used to sneak wine off the table during holidays, during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Maybe my heart reaches out to those periods of time. The Charles Krug, Grey Riesling days, and so forth. And then it quickly developed. As I got a little bit older, started working in a liquor store, and maybe unbeknownst to them, I built up my cellar to about 50 bottles of wine before I headed to Davis. And I was also rooming with a couple of cyclists. We had tremendous appetites, and we basically consumed my collection of 50 bottles in about 2 months. Oh. So it didn't last long. I needed to really kind of branch out and find new sources of wine, and that began my experimentation. Later on, became a bartender in Old Town, Sacramento, and so really got more and more into wine at that point as a consumer, really appreciating what wine as a beverage in itself, and that really further developed as I became a wine buyer for a restaurant down in Berkeley Marina. So I started there in 1984. Goes back a long time. And so I was opening bartender there at this restaurant, and became a wine buyer. And so really got into really a great appreciation, because it's like a muscle. I mean, you have to really develop your sense of smell, taste, and really your tasting. I would say I was probably tasting 60 to 100 bottles or wines a week, and so it's a great education, and it's really an education of really putting together the complexities of wine and from all the different regions of the world. So that really kind of was the foreground to me getting into wine production later on in my life.
Nice. All right, Enkidu.
Yeah.
Where'd that name come from? What does it mean?
Yeah, it's a great story. It comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's the oldest text written. It was basically an oral story for about 1,000 years before they developed cuneiform. And cuneiform means basically wedge-shaped. And so they would basically take a tiny wedge and make these symbols. And it's a Sumerian culture. Mesopotamia, and Sumerians are pre-Hasidic or Hasidic, pre-Hebrew culture. And so once they developed the cuneiform, they put it down in text, you might say, or in symbol. And that was about almost 4,000 years ago. So this is a story that goes back almost 5,000 years. And it's an amazing story. The Epic of Gilgamesh, really the first real epic that was ever put down, and as in history, you might say. And the epic itself really shows that there really has not been that much of a change in man's characteristics at all. What our foibles that we had back then are still greatly accentuated now. And that means basically, I would say, living in they didn't really live, or let me put it this way: Gilgamesh didn't really live in the present. He was always looking for more, and he was pretty arrogant, and arrogance is really destructive. And his destruction was to his people and to others around. So the story goes is that Enkidu was sent down by the gods to balance off Gilgamesh the king. The people needed help, and they called to the gods. And so what was sent down is a lump of clay. So from this earth sprung Enkidu. And Enkidu really started off as being this hairy man-beast, and really just a really beastie type of strength and size. He ran into forests, protected the animals, but he was the heat and the passion. So we look at really balance, and I really take that all the way through into my wines and try to implement that in my life. So this story is about balance, and so it's a yin and yang story for the most part. So Enkidu had that heat and that passion. He was the red fire coming from the earth, and he had a really great ethic about him as well, a moral ethic that really comes from the earth, that really transcended. I would say, he's not a cultured individual like Gilgamesh was, but his ethics were beyond what Gilgamesh were. So Gilgamesh was really hard, cold, smart, built cities, but he was cold-hearted. And just really, again, the antithesis of what Gilgamesh was, or what Enkidu was. But so there really is this yin and yang, this of these two. And so once Enkidu came into the kingdom, they fought for about 3 days, really basically to a draw. But it's almost like this melding of these personalities, and they became great friends afterwards and really attached to one another. You would like to think that this balance would have mitigated some, and maybe it did to a certain extent, but some of the characteristics of Gilgamesh and some of his arrogance, some of his destruction. But they later on in the tale, in this epic, they basically perpetrated some pretty heinous events, you might say, and basically led to the demise of Enkidu when they killed off Humbaba, which is the protector of the cedar forest, this monstrous creature. And so, that's a story of friendship. It's a story of, again, of balance, you might say, and loyalty. Enkidu's loyalty to Gilgamesh was really strong. For me, it's really, in how it relates to Enkidu, is more to the winery itself. His character, again, is about balance. It's about the heat and the passion. And if you really think about what and how we approach our work, especially during harvest, we're working long hours, and you have to have a lot of passion and be really involved in what you're doing in order to get through it, especially all these years. I've been at it for over 28 years. I've had Enkidu since 2004, basically. So it's been a lot of years, and so you're working a lot of long hours. Our knuckles are dragging on the ground like Enkidu. Our hair gets really long. You're getting really scraggly, and so we look like the hairy man beast. And so that's something that really spoke to me when I really found this story. Yeah.
This is not, most people just say it's Phil Staehle Wines.
Right.
Not Enkidu, and nobody knows what Enkidu is. So where did you read this story?
Yeah. So I couldn't be an eponymous label because there was already a Philip Staehle out there. Spelled differently, but he's up in Hillsburg. I think his brand may be gone now, but he had been in industry for decades, and I think I just met him once. It was kind of funny. So, but I couldn't use that for my label. So, my wife she's a PhD. She's a psychologist, and so she kept on throwing books at me to read, and some of these books had this reference to this epic of Gilgamesh and this balance between Gilgamesh and Enkidu. And so I said, I've got to read this story. And so there's some really short versions online. And I read this and I said, wow, this is really a fantastic story. So I read some more in-depth books on this. And it was just, to me, it just really spoke. It's so much so that I'm a huge fan of it and became a huge fan of Enkidu. And so before I had the winery, I had my first yellow lab named Enkidu. So, it's funny because
Started
there. So when I did start the winery, my daughter goes, "Oh my God, Dad, you named your winery after your dog."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you decide which vineyards to buy from? And is it like I go here for this type of wine or there for that type of wine? Or is it do you just like look at Napa Valley or Sonoma Valley or Lake County?
Yeah.
Right? And just say, I'm just going to buy from them.
Right.
So how do you make that decision?
It's a lot of factors. And certainly you start off, okay, what kind of wines do I want to make? What kind of, do I want to make? If I want to make Pinot, well, I'm not going to be searching in hot, climate and those types of things. So, and there's a certain style I want of Pinot Noir. So my style, I love Russian River, Sonoma Coast, but primarily Russian River. I just love what that profile gives me. There's a little more tension in the wines, more about red berry, cranberry, raspberry, strawberry, Asian spice. It's the soils, it's the climate that's around there. And the terroir, you talk about terroir is all of that. It's not just the earth. It's also what is your vegetation around and then in those areas as well. So I'll look at what the cost is. I mean, you got to look, as running a business, you have to look at what the cost is. And so am I producing cab out of the foothills or I'm producing cab out of Napa Valley? Well, cab prices could be $15,000 to $25,000 a ton. Is there a market for that wine? I ultimately really focus, I would say 80% of our wines, I really focus on Sonoma County, and that's where we are. It's where that's where I live, and that's where I've been making wines since 1987. It's been in Sonoma County, and mainly in the mountains. So, setting out to make Cabernet, Pinot Noir, and some of the other varietals, I look at the regions and the terroir that they have in those places. Love mountain fruit. So Cabernet up in the mountains, to me, is really, really special. First off, you have tremendous amount of just volcanic type of soil, very well trained, a lot of minerality to these, and you have a lot of the flora around these vineyards, a lot of brush, and you have which does have some kind of an influence on the grapes as well, and with mountain fruit, you get a little bit more concentration. The higher you get up in the mountains, the skins get thicker, trying to protect the seed from the UV. And really, that's where you get the color. And color comes from skins, but you also get richness. So that also combined with higher tannins. So that's as a winemaker, I have to balance that off. But I do like, it's just more of an impactful wine. And so I do look for more mountain fruit, let's say for Cabernet, for my higher end cabs. And, so that's kind of the start. And then I look at vineyards, okay, what are their vineyard practices? And the vineyard practices in Sonoma County now has to be sustainable. And we can go beyond that. We can go organic, which I really like a lot. And so I look at what the vineyard practices are, how much they crop the vineyard, which means how much fruit do they want that vineyard to produce. And sometimes, I've been to some really good vineyards, and all of a sudden they become, I can't say greedy, but I mean they have to make ends meet, and so they start producing a lot more fruit than what the vineyard is not capable of producing in a balanced way. So you look at that, and ultimately I'll taste samples. So I will, if wines have been made from these vineyards in the past, I will sample those wines and see what the relationship is with the grower. I mean, it's a really a give and take with the grower. They have their economic needs. They want their wines also, the grapes, to go to wines that are going to be really well representing the quality of that vineyard, and you have to respect that. And on our part, I want to make sure that I'm also getting the quality they want. Some of these vineyards I actually do work in, and I'll drop fruit, I'll manage canopy, and do these types of things to try and increase the quality of those wines. And a lot of those wines, we do vineyard designates on those wines, because there's something special about the vineyard. The quality of the wine itself really dictates that it is suitable for a vineyard designate. So it represents what they're doing, it represents what I'm doing. So it is this collaborative effort. And everything from how we produce all the way down to the economic aspects of it as well.
Vineyard designate, what does that mean?
So basically 95%. I might be wrong. It might be 98%. I think it's 95%. It has to come from that vineyard.
Okay.
Yeah, specifically from that vineyard. And so we have different laws, regulations for our designations of whether it's varietal, comes from a certain region, and in this case, is it a state or is it vineyard designate? And so a vineyard designate, so it's really a wine that's representative. It really needs to be representative. That's why they require it to be at least 95% from that vineyard itself, because you're putting it on a label. It should be that.
Right. And then dropping fruit. I mean, I've heard that, and I know what they go and they cut and they drop some fruit to the ground. But when do they do that, and why do they do that?
There's a couple of reasons why. You'll look at a green drop, a green harvest. Is sometimes what they look at. So growers will have their crews go in and they will drop fruit that has not developed in the same way that the majority of the fruit has. So it's green. We call it a green harvest as one term, green drop. And so we'll just, if it's, a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks behind, it's going to be more tannic, more acidic, and just really not representative of what the bulk amount of the harvest will be. That's one aspect. The other aspect is cropping, and I'm looking at, how much are we cropped? And so they'll go in pretty early on that, and to drop fruit, so they'll leave a certain amount of you might say shoots for which they grow off of. You get clusters off the shoots, and sometimes they'll leave to start off with more in case there's frost or there's something that they just don't develop, or there's what we call shatter, where shatter basically means that not every one of the berries develops because of they didn't get fertilized when they were in their early stages. So you're looking at what your crop level is, and it's like, okay, well, we developed really, really well. We need to drop some fruit because we're way overcropped here. And we're supposed to be producing around 4 tons per acre, and we're up at 6 tons per acre. So we better drop some fruit. That's one aspect of it. The other part for me is not necessarily always the when I go in and drop fruit, I'm going in to make sure that the clusters are hanging independently, so air and light can get to them. Petit Syrah is one case where Petit Syrah is a very unique grape. It wants to all develop clusters in a fruit zone all on top of each other. And Petit Syrah, very tannic, high in color, but very, very tannic wine, needs to have exposure to light, needs to have exposure to air. And so I'll go in, regardless of the cropping of it, I'll go in and I'll drop fruit just to make sure that everything's hanging freely in order to produce the Petit Syrah at the level that we do.
Nice. All right. Holidays are here.
Yeah.
Let's pair some of your wines with some of the holiday favorites that people enjoy.
Sure.
All right. Turkey, roasted chicken. Now, is there not really a difference, right? I mean, whatever works with a turkey. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think there is.
There you go.
I think that you get with turkey, you can actually go with a Pinot with turkey.
Okay.
Just because there's a little bit more richness, you might say, and especially in the dark meat with turkey, it can be pretty rich. And so it can definitely handle a red wine, light red wine. Pinot with turkey also, I would say rosé would be another one. And if you want to go with a white wine, I would go maybe, let's say, with a Chardonnay or something, or a Viognier, something that has a little bit more body to that, but also with acidity as well, to help counteract or balance out some of the fat and the richness in that respect. Chicken, you can go a little bit lighter. You can go maybe more Sauv Blanc. A nice barrel-aged and Sauv Blanc, I think, is really, really good with chicken. If you're looking at more of the savory characteristics, Sauv Blanc is great. I mean, to me, it's one of my very favorite wines for food, just because of its aroma and varietal characteristics. And it can have coriander. It can have more of an herbal type of component, a little more savory in that respect. And again, I think rosé goes great. It's dry rosés. In the case, we make a rosé from the Rhone grapes, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, and it's barrel fermented as well, so it has a little more richness, a little more depth to it, and so it really goes well with food from that standpoint.
Thanks. How about ham?
Ham. Oh, what goes with ham? So,
And cheese?
Yeah, ham and cheese. Ham and cheese. Yeah, lettuce and some bread.
Right.
Yeah, no. I think Grenache could be really, really good, and then because there's some sweetness, and a lot of times if you're doing ham, it could be like a glaze or something like those. And there's just smokiness as well. Grenache has a really bright red fruit, like crushed red fruit. I think that is it's a little bit more. Has a little bit more depth sometimes than some Pinots, I would say. A little more tannin to it, a little bit more structure to it, and I really think it can handle ham. Ham can be a little bit smoky as well, and I think that goes well with Grenache.
Okay, and now beef. So you got tri-tip, roast,
Sure.
brisket. I mean, do you discern like if it's a brisket, it's this type of wine. If it's roast, it's that type of wine.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people ask, or they put out there that they love Zinfandel with barbecue. Yeah, so if you're doing barbecue, because barbecue sauce, and there's a sweetness to it and an aspect to it, and it's spicy, and so I think Zinfandels can go along with that. I don't do as much of barbecuing with barbecue sauce. I do more savory. So I'm looking more to savory. Or I may make a sauce. That may have some not that much sweetness to it at all, but it's more of a sauce with maybe a little bit of plum or a little bit of cherry that's in there, but it is a brown sauce with a lot of savory notes to it. And so it's definitely, Cab works, and Cab has always traditionally been a wine that a lot of people pair with beef, so forth. I love Petit Syrah. And so Petit Syrah has the structure. And it's the astringency definitely cuts through any of the fat that you may have in beef. But it also, there is, especially like ours that we produce out of fruit out of Lake County. There's a kind of this sage type of component that really comes from the brush that's around you. You just smell it in the air there. Right. But it also has this really nice, most of the time it's a black Java pepper. Sometimes it's more white pepper, but for the most part, it's more of a black pepper, which I think is great with beef. Because beef, you do have, a lot of times people are using a lot of black pepper in beef. And so they really kind of go well together, but it's also, the complementary aspect is really that astringency really cutting through with that beef fat and so forth. And so I think Petit Syrah really works as a great food wine.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be. I was waiting for the cab, and cab.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. How about shellfish, crab, lobster?
Yeah, I love all those. So if you're going with shellfish, if crab a little bit more, you might go with more, because a lot of times they combine that with butter. And so something complimentary is going to be maybe something like a Chardonnay or something like that along those lines. And there's a sweetness to crab, right? And so sweetness to crab, maybe even a Viognier, but again, with really good acidity to these wines. I don't think you really want to have a wine that's flabby. And just in general, when I'm drinking wines, I don't like wines that are flabby. I like higher acidity in my whites for that reason. If you're going for oysters, definitely I would go like a really, really dry Chenin Blanc. A well-made Chenin Blanc. If you're looking at, Cabernet or Sauvignon Blanc is another one that would go really well with that as well.
Okay. Lasagna.
Yeah.
I think the question we talked about before was, is it vegetarian? Is it meat? What kind of meat?
Yeah.
So maybe just cover a vegetarian, and then I'm not sure what meat, like a sausage. So
yeah, you can go sausage on that. Okay. You can go like wild boar.
Okay.
That always goes well. When I think of lasagna, a lot of times I do like, and I don't produce these wines, but I do like whether it is a Nebbiolo, more of a Barolo, excuse me, a Barolo, from Piemonte region of Italy, or you go more Sangiovese style, and Sangiovese from Tuscany, a little bit. They're both really dry, so those really to me really work well, with lasagna in general.
Okay. You mentioned some of the wines you get, some of your grape from Lake County. You're a Lake County guy, aren't you?
I am Lake County. Yeah, I could say this because I grew there. I left before I grew my third eye and lost all my teeth.
I was going to say, you still have all your teeth, so you weren't there long.
Yeah. They started getting loose, and that's why I had to move out.
There you go. Okay, like before the main course gets there, like, you're still fixing it. You got some appetizers out, so hors d'oeuvres.
Sure.
What kind of wines? And again, I realize it could be dependent on what food is out there.
Yeah, exactly.
But what are some safe bets to put out for people?
I mean, so for wines,
Yeah.
per se, I'd say rosé.
Okay.
Really rosé from that standpoint. And you can even go with fruitier rosés if you're having cheese, prosciutto, nata, those types of things as well. A lot of times some people will have dried fruit, and so sweeter, a little bit lighter rosé. I mean, you could even go with a little Riesling, Gewürztraminer, and it could be maybe not as dry. I love dry Gewürz, like with, let's say, really spicy Asian food. That just pairs so well from that standpoint. But for appetizers, I'd go maybe just because you are having maybe some cheeses that are going to be a little bit better, maybe with just a hint of sweetness to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we get your wines? Let's start first, maybe like through you have a website.
Yeah, we do.
All right. And so we could place an order.
Yeah.
Okay.
EnkiduWines.com.
Okay. And then you sell it like as much, as little? Are there pre-packaged?
We don't do too much prepackaged. We have a little bit of that, but it's individual, and people should always feel free to call us and at our tasting room for. I don't have that number, but you do.
707-343-1078. That was good. I wasn't sure what number that was.
And that's something. It's a fairly new tasting room, so I haven't memorized. I haven't put to memory yet. Anyways, So people should always feel free to communicate with us about what they're what they're seeking as far as some advice basically on the wines. If they're not really familiar with our wines, okay, what are these wines? What kind of flavors are they going to get out of them? What kind of structure are they going to get out of them, and so forth. And but people, if they do have some information about Enkidu, and we have a really good following. For being such a small winery, we have a really good following and pretty sophisticated following. But people are always looking for, hey, how are the wines aging? How is this going now? I've had this before. I had this 5 years ago. How is it now? And so it's always really good for people to contact us to consult and to get more recommendations and so forth. There are several places in Sonoma County that carry our wines. Big John's Market up in Hillsburg. You're looking at Oliver's has been doing a great job, and they are in several locations in Sonoma County. Okay. Willoughby's here in Petaluma. Yep. They're also in Santa Rosa. Bottle Barn is another one where we've been in off and on. Several restaurants. We've been with restaurants, you're kind of in and out from that stuff. But with the Starks restaurants, we've been in a number of times and so forth. So it's I'd say Oso, and it's been a really good I don't want to leave anybody out.
That's all right. Yeah. What you can do is we can get the names of the other ones, and we'll add that to the podcast. Yeah. But what about wine club? You have a wine club?
We have a wine club.
Okay.
We have a wine club, and a wine club really is the lifeblood of a winery, of a wine business. And for us and wineries that are small like us, I think it's really important. It's not just the revenue aspect of it. We are actually able to touch, communicate, and really have this relationship with people, because we're not dealing with a wine club that's into the many thousands. It's in the hundreds. And so I really think about how much wine I produce and how many people I know that drink our wine. As a relationship, as a ratio, it's really, really high. And that's great, because I'm able to have and develop this relationship. And I've done this over time with many, many people. That we've had people in our wine club since we started in 2009. And so they continue on and so forth. A lot of friends in different states, like in Texas. We do a lot of work in Texas, and those relationships that you establish there, they've carried on for well over a decade. And so having, by being smaller and by me being out there, I'm not removed from the public. And and from people who are enjoying our wines. I'm integrated into that, and as well as other people, and it's really an authentic relationship that we've really developed.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, how did the harvest go this year?
It was crazy harvest.
Crazy good, crazy.
It was crazy good, and it was really interesting. And I have 27 or so harvests under my belt, and this is the craziest harvest I've had, and not how fast it went. It was the earliest by far of how much fruit I had in before Labor Day. I had 40% of my fruit in before Labor Day. Mostly, I think all my Pinots were in. I think I had some Petit Verdot in. My whites were in, and so forth, rosés. It wasn't so much that. It was the chemistry and what we found. So when we would go and sample in a vineyard, and I say samples, we'd take a number. It could be 100 berry sample or a 200 berry sample. It's a large block and we do analysis on that and really look at what our sugars are and what we can do further chemical analysis as well. And so we get a number. Hey, we're ready to pick. Tastes good. The seeds are there. Physiologically, it's ripe, and the sugars are X. Normally, when you get into tank, it's always X plus as far as the sugar. So if we sample at 24, it's 24.5 in tank by the time we get to day 2 or 3. In this case, we were losing sugar. So we'd sample at 24, and it gets into the tank, it's 22.5. And it was in not just one vineyard, it was in multiple vineyards. And I'm thinking, my Lord, I lose my ability to just do sampling. And so I did have people start contacting me and say, hey, have you seen this? And I say, yeah, I have seen this, and it's really weird. And on top of it, we had the lowest conversion level I've ever seen by far. I mean, by leaps and bounds of sugar to alcohol. So not only are we emptied up with less bricks in the tank, we're also looking at less conversion to alcohol in the tank. So I have several wines that are in the 12s in alcohol, in Pinots. I think all my Pinots, I only have a couple that are barely over 13. I have several that are in the 12s. But Petit Verdot, Dry Creek, after the heat, I'm expecting it's going to be 27. Well, we measured it, or in the vineyard, it's about 24.5, 25, right around there. By the time I got in the tank, it had dropped down to 23. By the time we fermented, it was about 13% alcohol. But the thing is that we got the richness, we got the balance, we got the flavors, and all that's there. So I'm kind of excited about this because I have wines that are much lower in alcohol we've ever done, but yet they still have the richness and they still have, the development. Furthermore, I do a Saunier on all of my red. Means I bleed off juice, and to concentrate the skins on the juice that's there for, again, to develop more body, more weight, more flavor, more everything. And that really paid off this year, I think. And just because you do have lighter alcohol will contribute to the body of the wine and structure. And so some of that if you lose some of that can be also offset by having more of a concentration, like what I did on the skins. And it's paid off, and I'm pretty excited about it, actually.
Oh, this will be interesting to see how these come out then.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the website?
It's Enkidu Wines,
Okay.
plural, so .com.
All right, and the phone number again, 707-343-1078.
That's right.
Phil, thanks a lot for being here with us.
That's been great. I
All
appreciate
right.
it. All right.
Take care.
Thank you, Alan.
Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.